Hello everybody and welcome to today's video where I want to talk about MercadoLibre. MercadoLibre reported its Q4 earnings and we have the full year numbers now for 2022, and we can see that MercadoLibre is doing very, very well. Their Q4 2022 revenue numbers for the quarter were 56% year over year if you do a Forex neutral metric, and if you look at Forex adjusted, it was 41%. Now, the reason for that is, of course, the Fed tightened and the dollar went up kind of like crazy against any currency. As far as the underlying growth of the business, the underlying growth of business for MercadoLibre is very strong at 56%. And the numbers are staggering. You know, $100 billion in payment with MercadoPago as a run rate, right? 1 billion items shipped with Mercado Envios, which is their kind of Amazon Prime. 1 billion of income from operations. Now, many of you know that I really don't care too much about income. I look more at ratio of revenue and at gross margin. But revenues are great and the gross margin is still great for MercadoLibre. So that's pretty impressive. As far as, let's look at some of the fundamental factors of the business. So 80% of their merchandise now is delivered under 48 hours with Mercado Envios. And so that's part of the core business. E-commerce and shipping is the core business. MercadoLibre is in free markets. It's a leading player in free markets in Brazil, in Mexico, and in Argentina, the largest countries of Latin America. So really, really big player. The Amazon of Latin America essentially is what you can compare MercadoLibre to. When I look at MercadoLibre, one thing that I love is that unlike, for example, Coupang, and some of our companies who didn't put their fintech in the same business, MercadoLibre has a fintech, and its fintech is doing so well. The size of a fintech business in a matter of 3 years multiplied by 5. So fintech is still a relatively new business for MercadoLibre, right? It's less than 5 years old. It's 3 years old, and what I may say here is that Nubank probably has some competition coming right here because they are having 88 million unique active users for MercadoPago. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get people to use those wallets that they use to buy online on MercadoLibre. They're trying to get people to use that for payments elsewhere. And the opportunity that they're going after is the same opportunity that Nubank is going after. Of course, MercadoLibre as Pago is likely a smaller business, but that's not their main business. That's a side business for MercadoLibre. They are trying to also become the principal financial institution for tens of millions of people by using the same cross-selling strategy and offering products such as debit cards, loans, insurance, savings accounts. Who knows, perhaps in a few years, we'll be talking about MercadoLibre offering stocks, offering crypto, and offering all sorts of remittance services, just like Nubank is offering. So keep in mind, this is a side business. These businesses are using their customers of the e-commerce platform to roll out a fintech. And by all means, 44 million unique active users of MercadoPago is nothing meaningless. It is meaningful, right? As a comparison, Cash App in the US has 80 million users. So this is very, very meaningful, a meaningful side of the business. Let me go more in depth into what they've announced for the business. So first of all, the e-commerce gross merchandise volume is up quite a bit at 35%. The growth is principally driven by Brazil and Mexico. And Mexico saw a intake of a whole bunch of new unique buyers. Remember that this company is mostly leading in Brazil right now, and it's gaining share in Mexico. And of course, Argentina, but as well, Chile is not doing as well. Chile is a very side business for MercadoLibre. Argentina is the bigger business, and there's an obvious economic crisis in Argentina. There's been an economic crisis in Argentina for the past 40, 50 years. So Argentina is kind of a special situation type of market. You would invest in the stock for Brazil, for Mexico, and Argentina is kind of the icing of the cake on the cake. Let's look at their logistics. Logistics is all about delivery speed. They keep investing to improve delivery speed, right? That's the Amazon Prime of South America. And not only 80%, as I said, 80% of their products that they ship with Envios is today right? 48-hour shipping, so kind of an Amazon Prime of Latin America, but also 43% of their orders of the platform MercadoLibre is going by Envios and is not going by local shipping services. So they are undercutting local shipping services, just like they are undercutting banks and payment system where when customers pay directly through MercadoPago as opposed to paying with, say, a debit card. So this is a business that has scale, that can grow much further, even though it's already a fairly large business. Just like Amazon again, they are copying Amazon on this, absolutely shameless. They're doing Mercado Ads. There's no issues with copying Amazon. Actually, this is something that Alibaba does as well. Part of the business is that you are going to allow merchants on your platform who sell products on your platform and who pay the listing fees and the commissions on the platform. Right? The main source of revenue is the listing fees and commissions of those goods on that marketplace, the MercadoLibre marketplace. They make money on the fees and the listing and commissions, but they also want to make money on ads now. So we're creating a platform where competition between sellers goes on. And so 1.4% of the gross merchandise volume sold on MercadoLibre was spent by merchants towards placing ads on the MercadoLibre platform. And of course, this is pure profit, right? 1.5% you pay for an ad. You just show up first in the listing in the web page. That's essentially pure profit for MercadoLibre, which is an amazing business to do. So they have, just like Amazon, an amazing opportunity in advertising. They have much room for growth with their logistics systems, right? Amazon's share of delivered packages is much higher, so they have a lot of growth here, and they still have plenty of growth in the e-commerce business, especially in Mexico. So lots of things going on, and they're in Chile, and so the question becomes: are they going to expand maybe in other markets in Latin America? Are they going to one day move out of Latin America? This business has a lot of potential for growth. Let me move on. The fintech business, right? When you bought MercadoLibre 5 years ago, you didn't even think about the fintech business. That was not part of your thesis. I mean, at least that wasn't part of my thesis. But actually, 44 million active users, that's up 27% year over year. Remember, that's a side business for MercadoLibre, so that's huge, right? $25 billion of transactions went through in Q4, went through MercadoPago. That's $100 billion in run rate going through. That means that those 2 to 3% fees that you get with open loop payment systems that go through bank, MercadoLibre doesn't have to pay for those, because when people use MercadoPago, they don't have to worry about paying the fees to payment processors. So MercadoLibre is making tremendous savings by not having to pay these payment processors fees, and this is going up and up again, and so you are going to make more money doing that. The division, of course, is focused, as I said earlier, is focused on turning Pago and the fintech division into a bank. They want to be a competing bank, and in order to become a competing bank against Nubank, and I'm not saying they'll be the most competitive against Nubank, but just if they get a little bit of that share, that can be absolutely tremendous. And they can offer things like insurance, things like savings account, things like credit. Moving on to credit, right? Credit is important in Latin America. Actually, it's a tiny part of the business right now, but it's a high growth part of the business. And you can see that the margin on Mercado Crédito is 48% interest after losses. 48% margin after losses, and they're actually saying, that their margins, they're not happy about these margins right now because they are taking risk mitigating measures, and so there's less takers of these margins. But that's a huge margin, and that's a huge margin even for Latin American inflation. Maybe not Argentina, but Brazil's inflation is in the 6%, so it's not that much more than the U.S. Inflation in general is higher there, but that's still tremendous margin. That's still a much higher margin on credit cards in Latin America than you would have margins on credit cards in the US. And they have a teeny tiny point of sale business, which would be a direct competitor to StoneCo. That's growing, but that is still small, so doesn't really move the needle just yet. When I look at MercadoLibre's Q4 and the full year, I am just happy. When I look at e-commerce, the fees, the ad fees, the listing fees, all of the fees related to e-commerce and the e-commerce platform, right, the legacy business, you are up 46% year over year on a constant currency basis. If you look at the fintech business, you are up 118% year over year in constant currency basis. And if you look at the credit business, you're up 111% year over year in constant currency basis. Of course, fintech and credit is still a smaller part of the business, but if you add those up, you're actually slightly higher than e-commerce. So this is a quickly growing part of the business. And look at the constant currency, local currency growth rates quarter over quarter. I mean, you are sometimes in the triple digits, although we got to be careful about inflation, right? When we look at Argentina, we know much of this is to compensate for inflation and the dropping of the currency. But when you look at more stable markets like Brazil or Mexico, you can see that these growth rates are just, if you average it, it's well anchored around the 50% growth, 50% revenue growth. Hence why I say 50% revenue growth when it comes to MercadoLibre. That growth just continues, and that is absolutely amazing. Now, the reason why I talk about constant currency here and not FX currencies, because we are kind of in a special situation. The dollar went up in value because of the tightening of the Fed, and Mexican peso is actually back to what it was and a stable currency, but the Brazilian real, the currency yet has to stabilize. And again, Argentine peso, that's a special situation. The Argentine peso is likely going to see tremendous inflation year after year. That's just how Argentina makes monetary policy. They just have an open monetary printing policy. But what I want to talk about is that the Fed tightened monetary policy first. And because of that, the value of the dollar went up relative to a lot of currencies from developing markets. It went up, right? In fact, the value of the US dollar went up ahead of everybody. But my thesis in this channel in Beat the Denominator is that the Fed is going to have to loosen monetary policy probably in the second half of 2023, in my view. And when the Fed loosens monetary policy, the dollar value is going to drop. And these currencies will loosen policy at one point too, but there will be a lag, right? They acted later, and there will be a lag. So these currency movements, right, depend so much on the Fed that they could move in the direction of the US investor when you look at constant currency in the future. So that's why I want to be careful. Of course, over the long run, that is a different story. Over the long run, you can reasonably expect some depreciation of, frankly, most currencies against the US dollars over the long run. But over the short term, I do maintain that right now, the price of the dollar is elevated because of what the Fed is doing, and it won't be like that forever. At least that is my stance on this. So I want to take the FX adjusted number with a grain of salt, because we've had the biggest rate hikes, the fastest streak of rate hikes in history. So that has to do with that. When you look at, and this is not constant currency, by the way, this is dollar adjusted. This is from macro trends. But even if you look at dollar adjusted currency, you can see that this company has had consistent 50% growth. And when you have exponential growth, you have an inflection point, of course. So you have a consistent 50% growth, quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter, year over year growth expressed as a quarter. And this company doesn't give guidance. They didn't give guidance. I haven't seen them give guidance much often. They might give guidance on the call, which I will get to right after I'm done recording this video. But we don't get much guidance. But I think over a long run, this is a 50% grower. There's not a lot of 50% growers out there for the long run. Yeah, Tesla is one of them. I believe Mercado is one of them too, and so that's why I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm buying MercadoLibre. I've been buying it consistently for many years, and I keep buying this stock. I think this company has figured out something, has figured out a way to achieve consistent 50% growth. And when a stock has consistent 50% growth, if it can sustain that for just over 5 years, the returns would be absolutely outstanding. So like I said, and we may even get a surprise to the upside on revenue growth if the Fed loosens. If the Fed loosens interest rate, you could have a surprise up in revenue growth when you look at it in dollars. So long term, it's a different story, as I said. Long term, I believe the dollar will be the stronger currency. And let me finish this video about this 50% consistent grower. Let me finish this video by saying one more catalyst, which was not mentioned in the shareholder letter of Melly. But that catalyst is that, yes, obviously, Americanas.com, which was also a retailer, that retailer went bankrupt. The retailer went bankrupt, which means that those numbers could go up because we don't. I mean, it's a bankruptcy court right now. The company's protected, but we don't know what's going to happen in the long run to a key competitor that went out of business, and this is not reflected in the stock price. So that's a key catalyst that I want to finish with here. And lastly, valuation. What about valuation? Well, as you know, I like to figure out how much I'm paying for those percentage point of growth. How much am I paying for those percentage point of growth? I have updated my spreadsheet with MercadoLibre, and I used actually pretty conservative growth guidance. I used 45%, 10% less than what they've done usually. Gross margin, noteworthy here, is that their gross margin has went down a little bit. It's went down by 2%. Nothing alarming in my view, but the gross margin has went down a little bit. It used to be 51%. So when I look at that, I am still getting the cheapest price for growth. And you may say, wait a minute, Coupang is actually higher, but I was very generous on revenue growth for Coupang. So to me, out of all of the stocks of e-commerce that I look at, I believe that MercadoLibre is the cheapest stock right now. And actually, it is significantly cheaper than my average price for growth that I usually pay for growth. I want to point out that while C Limited with Shopee and the fintech, is kind of a decent comparison to MercadoLibre, although C Limited has a gaming division, so you can't exactly compare it entirely. Shopify is a US stock. It's a special situation, special valuation. I don't want to put it there. But when you compare MercadoLibre to a stock like Coupang, for example, Coupang, and this is what disappointed me so much in my analysis of Coupang, they spun off their fintech division. The fintech division is not part of the deal if you buy the South Korean leader of e-commerce. It's not part of the deal. If you buy MercadoLibre or C Limited, both of these companies keep the fintech division in the deal, right? In the company. They didn't spin it off, which I think is very, very important in looking at these stocks. I'll conclude. My third conclusion here. I'll conclude by looking at price-to-sales ratio. When you look at the price-to-sales ratio, even with the recent recovery in the price of MercadoLibre compared to like the 700, it got down to the $700 a share. That was way too cheap. You're still buying the stock, the cheapest in 13 years. That stock is still the cheapest in 13 years. And with the growth rate, I encourage you to stop right here and look at some of the constant currency growth rate that this company is experiencing in each country and in each division. So I am buying the stock. It's one of my favorite stocks to buy right now, one of my bigger positions. And I think this was an outstanding quarter, outstanding year for MercadoLibre. No investment advice, of course. Thank you for watching. This was just entertainment. I hope you like the video. It really helps me out. Please subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out as well. Thank you and have a wonderful day.